15. Nick Nidev. In December 2016, footage of a man jumping off a Princess cruise ship was uploaded to YouTube. Filmed by an eyewitness who was heard laughing in the background, the clip was accompanied by almost no details of when and where the incident actually happened. The video showed the unnamed man thrusting himself off the bow of the ship while it sat in port. He was then seen swimming toward the person recording. While commenters on the video pointed out that the man jumped from a survivable height, others have been known to take deadlier risks. In early 2019, a 27-year-old man from Vancouver, Washington, named Nick Nidev made headlines for jumping off a Royal Caribbean ship during a cruise in the Bahamas. According to several reports, Nidev took the 120-foot plunge from the Symphony of the Seas deck, while his friends filmed the act for an Instagram video. Nidev's buddies could be heard laughing right before he jumped, but they seemed genuinely surprised that he went through with it. They sounded even more relieved when they saw him swimming and knew that he'd survived. After all, many, if not most people who jump off cruise ships do not live to tell their tale. A smaller boat eventually picked Nidev up, and he was quickly ordered to grab his belongings and leave the cruise ship as soon as possible. Bahamian police declined to charge him for the stunt, leaving him free to pay the small $200 fee that it cost to fly him back to Miami. Royal Caribbean banned him from their cruises for life though, and while a few social media users thought Nidev was funny, a greater number of commenters thought he was downright stupid and disapproved of his actions. But even after everything, it was still all fun and games to Nidev, who mentioned in a comment thread under the video that he was drunk from the night before when he took the plunge. He went on to say that once he sobered up, he was in severe pain. Nidev said he was hurting so badly that he was hardly able to walk or sleep for 3 days afterward. 14. Bintuzi. People do a lot of crazy things for a bit of attention on social media, and sometimes the consequences are pretty substantial. A young man from China's Jilin province named Bin Tuzi experienced a terrifying but hilarious close call in early 2024 when his pants caught on fire during an immature prank that was caught on camera. In the footage, the person filming was seen igniting a lighter near Tuzi's crotch as he lay with his back end facing the camera. If you hadn't already guessed, he was doing what many had done before him. He was trying to light his fart on fire. Unlike most of the individuals who had already filmed themselves igniting their flatulence and shared it on social media, the flame actually spread to Tuzi's pajama pants. He was seen flailing wildly and rolling over in a heated panic during the 1 or 2 seconds it took to extinguish the back-end blaze, while his friend just kept recording and laughing hysterically. Thankfully, the fireball didn't seem to cause any serious injuries and the fire didn't spread. While lighting one's farts on fire seems like nothing more than a harmless gag, experts advise against doing so, especially since the flammability of flatulence can vary depending on the amount of fiber a person has recently consumed. The more you know. 13. Yuri Andrade. As the 2021 Super Bowl game between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Kansas City Chiefs inched towards the finale of the fourth quarter, a tattooed man jumped out of the stands and ran across the field in a hot pink high-cut thong leotard, low-riding black shorts, and bright yellow sneakers. Later identified as 31-year-old Yuri Andrade of Boca Raton, the half-naked man was quickly tackled near the end zone and escorted off the field by security personnel. Viral photos captured just a few moments before the takedown showed the brazen prankster smiling proudly with his arms in the air. According to the South Florida Sun-Sentinel, the purpose of the stunt was to promote Andrade's friend's adult website, which was advertised across his leotard. The friend allegedly paid another guy, Douglas Schaffer, $5,000 to distract security agents while Andrade stormed through the field. While the display was reportedly carried out strictly for business reasons, Andrade admitted that he got a thrill out of doing it. This much was obvious during interviews, when he described the act as the greatest moment of his life and the most amazing adrenaline rush. Andrade and Schaffer were both charged with misdemeanor trespassing. They each pleaded no contest and were sentenced to 1 year of probation, as well as 100 hours of community service. The judge also ordered the men to write apology letters to the NFL and pay a measly $500 fine. Andrade was also banned from Raymond James Stadium, but he said he was okay with it since he was more of a Dolphins fan anyway. While Andrade was only on the field for a few seconds, his glory was even less short-lived. He became somewhat of a legend for the immature but amusing prank, and has even shamelessly admitted that he doesn't regret it at all. 12. Brent Farley. Acting on an anonymous social media tip in August 2015, a team of 10 fugitive recovery agents, or bail bondsmen, tried to apprehend a man who was wanted on an outstanding warrant for drug charges in Phoenix, Arizona. Led by 43-year-old Brent Farley, the owner of the North Star Fugitive Recovery Company, the team launched a stakeout in tactical gear. They watched the supposed residence of their target for 2 hours before finally making their move at 10 p.m. Someone involved in the operation, which included several bounty hunters from Farley's company and Delta One Tactical Recovery, had their cell phone's camera rolling as the team swarmed the property with headlights on, flashlights in hand, and weapons ready. In the video, one team member was seen banging on the doors, while another repeatedly yelled, "Roderick, open the door." A man answered from inside the house, then came to the door and told the bounty hunters to turn off the flashlights pointed at his face. He then shut the door, turned on his outside light, and left the house shirtless with a police baton in hand. In a humiliating case of mistaken identity, the team had accidentally targeted the home of Phoenix Police Chief Joseph Yanna, who got into a heated argument with Farley. Thankfully, the rest of the bounty hunters quickly realized they were at the wrong place, and the confrontation ended without anyone getting hurt. Phoenix Police Sergeant Trent Crump later told news outlets that Farley refused to leave Yanna's property and continued barking orders to the police chief until another team member stepped in. It was later revealed that the anonymous tip came from Oklahoma, where the fugitive was thought to be hiding out. The person responsible for submitting the false tip was eventually ordered to serve 2 years of probation for an attempted computer tampering charge. Farley pleaded guilty to 1 felony count of attempted bail bond agency violation and was handed 2 years of probation. His attorney claimed that he only pleaded guilty because he didn't have a proper license to act as a bail bondsman during the incident. 4 other charges were dropped as part of a plea agreement, including disorderly conduct as well as criminal trespassing. At his sentencing, Farley apologized to both his family and colleagues, but claimed that he was a victim in the situation, which wouldn't have happened at all if the tipster hadn't given him bad information. Never mind the fact that this could have all been avoided if it simply vetted the informant and their claims more thoroughly before ambushing the residents. 11. Jessica Beatty. In an alleged scheme that was hilariously described by The Smoking Gun as monumentally moronic, a 42-year-old woman from Florida named Jessica Beatty stands accused of trying to pass a court-ordered drug test using dog pee. According to a police report, the Clearwater native had been released in December 2023 after being charged with drug paraphernalia and driving with a suspended license. As a contingency of her release, Beatty, who has a lengthy criminal history, including several cocaine-related convictions, was required to undergo random drug testing. If she tested dirty, she would most likely have to face the prospect of having her bond revoked or being sent off to jail. Just 2 weeks later, Beatty was called to the probation office for a drug test. At some point during the screening, the person tasked with supervising the test caught her with a foreign urine sample. While the details of exactly how the discovery was made aren't clear, this isn't really that surprising. After all, probation officers are difficult to fool, considering the fact that people have tried to pass drug tests using every trick in the book. What Beatty didn't know was that drug tests are capable of detecting the difference between human and dog urine. She allegedly admitted that she collected the urine sample from her aunt's dog. In addition to the charges she was already facing, she now faces 1 misdemeanor count of urine testing fraudulent practices. Her bond was also quickly revoked, and she remains in custody at the Pinellas County Jail while waiting for her next court date. 10. Eileen Schultz. In January 2023, when 61-year-old nanny Eileen Schultz was fired from her longtime job in Fort Myers, Florida, she allegedly decided to steal the family's dog Lady that same day. As soon as the family noticed their beloved Lady was missing, they immediately suspected Schultz of being responsible and filed a police report. Luckily, Lady wasn't gone for too long. Law enforcement tracked Schultz down to a local hotel the next morning after searching for the dog overnight. Schultz allegedly denied stealing Lady, but rethought her story after a hotel employee told investigators they saw her with the lost puppy. After being confronted with the clear-cut evidence, she admitted to taking Lady, but said she'd changed her mind. Instead of returning the dog to her family, though, Schultz dropped her off at an intersection down the road. Much to the family's relief, Lady was found at the home of a local resident who'd seen her wandering around and took her in overnight. The father of Lady's owner, who got on a plane to Florida from his home in St. Louis the moment he found out Lady was missing, told the press that his 4 grandkids were devastated when the dog vanished. Heartwarming footage captured by the Lee County Sheriff's Office showed the sweet, tearful reunion between Lady and the kid's grandfather, who expressed gratitude toward law enforcement and the hotel employee for helping with the dog's safe return. In the meantime, police arrested Schultz on suspicion of grand theft. Records show that she was released from jail, and the case seems to have been squared away since then. 9. Daniel Orderer. A 23-year-old graduate student named John Navi Kandula was walking in Seattle one night in January 2023 when a police SUV suddenly came barreling down the street at speeds of up to 74 miles per hour. The vehicle hit the young woman from India, who was thrown 138 feet and killed by her injuries. In accordance with the police department's policy, Officer Daniel Orderer was immediately dispatched to the scene to determine whether or not the officer behind the wheel, Kevin Dave, was impaired at the time of the crash. According to a report, Dave was on his way to an emergency call when he struck Kandula. His emergency lights were activated at the time, but he was only chirping his siren while passing through intersections. A subsequent investigation later concluded that Dave's speed was the main reason for the accident. Orderer, who was the vice president of the Seattle Police Union at the time of this case, conducted a routine assessment of Dave at his local precinct, then left the station in his patrol vehicle. Shortly after, Orderer contacted the union's president, Mike Solon. For the first few minutes of the phone call, he was apparently unaware that his body camera was rolling, and the audio it captured was downright disturbing. During the conversation, Orderer gave Solon a somewhat graphic description of how Kandula slammed onto the hood of the car, struck the windshield, and was thrown when Officer Dave pressed on the brakes. It's bad enough that Orderer seemed totally unfazed while remembering the events of a tragic death that had just recently happened. But the decision took a deeply unsettling turn when Orderer laughed right after telling Solon that Kandula passed away. In the words of author and Guardian columnist Mustafa Bayoumi, this was no uncomfortable chuckle. This was a hearty laugh from the back of the throat. The nature of Orderer's behavior only got worse from there, as he stated that Kandula had limited value and said to just write a check of $11,000 to fix the tragedy. He was also heard saying that Dave was driving 50 miles per hour during the accident, even though an investigation later found that the officer was driving at speeds of at least 63 miles per hour. To be clear, Orderer isn't a dumbass simply because he forgot to turn off his body camera. More than anything, he deserved the title because of the insensitivity of his words. When the recording finally went public 8 months after Kandula's death, Orderer denied that he was being insensitive at all and claimed that he was just imitating what a lawyer tasked with negotiating the case would be saying. He also said that he didn't think the private conversation was being recorded, but as many activists pointed out, it wouldn't be any less wrong if Orderer had actually remembered to turn off his body cam. In an official statement, the Seattle Police Officers Guild, the police union Orderer was the vice president of, implied that the video went viral without the proper context or full story being given alongside it. Shortly after, the story spread like wildfire. Orderer was taken off regular patrol and reassigned to a non-operational position. In October 2023, the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office hired an outside investigation firm to look into Kandula's death. There have been few public updates on the story since then, and there are at least 8 active petitions asking authorities to pursue justice for Kandula, the most popular of which has gathered a whopping 75,000 signatures and counting. 8. Kezia Shelton. In October 2023, 911 dispatchers in Muncie, Indiana got a call from a local car dealership employee about a 2013 Kia Optima that had just been stolen straight off the lot. The worker told police officers that he was getting the vehicle ready for a test drive when the dealership's phone suddenly started ringing off the hook. Nobody was even on the other end of the line the first time he answered, but when the phone rang again, he decided to pick it up just in case. He got out of the Kia to answer the phone, at which point the suspect, who was posing as a customer interested in purchasing the car, allegedly drove off. Using license plate recognition technology, it didn't take long for investigators to track the vehicle's movement to Indianapolis, over an hour's drive from the dealership, and back to Muncie. In the meantime, they identified the suspect as 20-year-old Kezia Shelton through an application she filled out to buy a car that she'd submitted to the dealership's website not long before the incident. According to the authorities, Shelton initially lied about her visit when police paid a visit to her house, but eventually confessed to stealing the Kia in order to drive to a job interview at a local strip club. She allegedly treated the situation as a huge joke and said she shouldn't be arrested because she returned the car by leaving it in a mall parking lot next to the dealership with the key still inside. Investigators said that Shelton claimed she didn't understand why she was being arrested since she no longer had the vehicle. But as most people with common sense know, it's against the law for someone to steal a car, regardless of whether or not they abandon it down the line. It's also illegal for a person to lie to the police about who they actually are. Shelton learned these lessons the hard way and was arrested on felony counts of both auto theft and identity deception. 7. Richard Lee Ortecho Jr. In early 2021, an Indian River County Sheriff's deputy spotted a car erratically weaving through traffic along Interstate 95 in Vero Beach, Florida. According to an arrest affidavit, radar clocked the driver cruising at speeds of up to 127 miles per hour in a 70-mile-per-hour zone. The suspect continued barreling along the highway at dangerously high speeds, even after the deputy turned on his lights and sirens to try and pull the vehicle over. Later identified as 21-year-old Richard Lee Ortecho Jr., the driver finally pulled to the side of the road after traffic forced him to slow down. After being handcuffed and read his Miranda rights, Ortecho reportedly apologized for going so fast and said he didn't realize reckless driving was illegal. When the deputy asked the young man why he was driving so fast, he explained that he was listening to a song called A Ciento Venti by a rapper named Track Insano, and in Ortecho's words, Ciento Venti means 120, so I was driving 120. He went on to claim that he didn't notice the deputy's lights and sirens flashing. When the deputy pointed out that it was dark at the time and that his lights should have been clearly visible from quite a distance, Ortecho allegedly blamed his loud music for his failure to notice he was being stopped. A young woman who was riding in the passenger seat of the car reportedly said that she told Ortecho to stop before he pulled over. Needless to say, Ortecho's explanations for his behavior did a poor job of persuading the deputy into letting him go. He was instantly taken into custody on suspicion of a felony fleeing charge, misdemeanor reckless driving, and 2 drug-related possession charges, bringing his wild joyride to an abrupt end. 6. Daniel Schroeder. Most people understand that you should only ever call 911 in the event of an emergency, but of course there are a few exceptions to the norm. 61-year-old Daniel Schroeder of Evansville, Indiana, fell into this category in September 2021 when he called 911 to report that he was upset with a female household member for not obeying his rules. He was then arrested for misuse of 911 and pleaded guilty to the charge. Schroeder was given a 6-month suspended jail sentence, which allowed him to walk free as long as he kept his promise to not bother emergency dispatchers with any more non-emergency calls. He allegedly violated the agreement the next day by calling 911 4 times to report that he was feeling tired. Authorities quickly revoked Schroeder's suspended sentence and charged him with another misdemeanor count of misusing 911, which he also pleaded guilty to. The judge overseeing the case amended his original sentence to 60 days in jail and imposed a concurrent 60-day sentence for the recent charge. At the time of the 911-related arrest, Schroeder was already on probation for driving drunk through a cemetery 4 months before. During this incident, a witness called the police, who observed at least 4 damaged tombstones after their arrival at the graveyard. By then, Schroeder had left the scene. Deputies later found him along a roadside by a public park, where his car was parked halfway in the road and partly in the grass. His blood alcohol content tested at nearly 3 times the legal limit, and police also found synthetic drugs inside his truck. Schroeder pleaded guilty to operating a vehicle while intoxicated, possession of a controlled substance, and leaving the scene of an accident. His probation was revoked after his arrests for misusing 911, and the case seems to have been factored into the 60-day jail sentence he ended up serving for these crimes. 5. Anna Stanskovsky. Most people agree that getting someone's name tattooed on your face is a horrible and stupid idea. So, it was no surprise when a 27-year-old British woman named Anna Stanskovsky received widespread outrage when she posted a TikTok video that seemed to show her getting her partner, Kevin's name, scrawled across her forehead in what she claimed was permanent ink. The video immediately went viral, garnering over 19 million views in only a few short days. Many social media users expressed the type of outrage one would expect to see when they believe a pretty young woman has permanently ruined her face, with some describing the tattoo as a disturbing and pathetic act of devotion to her boyfriend. After all, people do crazy things for love, but most would never even think of going as far as inking someone's name across their forehead. Other commenters responded to the footage with a reasonable dose of skepticism. Some of the more keen-eyed viewers noticed that the tattoo gun didn't have a needle in it, and that the young woman's skin wasn't showing signs of irritation, which would be expected after getting a tattoo. Many accused Stanskovsky of staging the TikTok in an attempt to increase her social media following. In a series of response videos, she insisted that the tattoo was real, saying in one clip, "I know it's a little crazy, but I like to express my feelings, and I think if you really love someone, you should be able to show it off." When asked what she would do if she and Kevin ever broke up, Anna said she would just have to find herself a new man named Kevin. But a lot of people were still skeptical, and with good reason. A little over a week after posting the first clip of her Kevin tattoo, Stanskovsky admitted that the art was fake, as many had suspected. In a TikTok video confessing to the hoax, she was seen wiping the ink off her forehead with a washcloth. Stanskovsky denied being a clout chaser and simply claimed that she pulled the prank in a bid to discourage other young people from impulsively getting tattoos that they might come to regret. She even went as far as saying that as someone with many real tattoos, including a few she regrets, she has a duty to influence people in the right way, to discourage them from making the same mistake she did. The explanation was understandably met with a lot of doubt, and only Anna herself will ever truly know what her motivations behind the hoax were. During the same week, a similar video by another young British woman made rounds on social media. In the footage, 24-year-old tattoo apprentice Georgia Bridges claimed she was getting her boyfriend, Dale's name, inked across her forehead at a parlor in the English village of Edenthorpe. She later said in an interview with Cater's news agency that she got the tattoo because she fully believes in the mantra, "Go big or go home." Much like the response on Stanskovsky's tattoo video, many social media users were skeptical of whether or not Georgia's Dale artwork was real, while others prayed that it wasn't. In a follow-up clip, Bridges admitted that the tattoo was actually fake. She was quicker to confess to her lies than Stanskovsky, but her motives for posting the deceptive video are just as unclear. 4. Miracle Rivera. In 2023, a 20-year-old Florida woman named Miracle Rivera had the pleasure of spending her Christmas Eve in jail after allegedly beating up her 24-year-old boyfriend with a Christmas tree. According to an arrest affidavit, Rivera was angry over her partner's alleged cheating. A disagreement broke out between the two at their St. Petersburg home, at which point Rivera's boyfriend left the couple's bedroom and went to lay on the living room couch. Rivera was accused of following him into the room, picking up their Christmas tree and hitting him with it repeatedly, leaving him with serious scratches all over his arms and upper body. The young woman was then arrested on suspicion of misdemeanor domestic battery and spent a day at the Pinellas County Jail before pleading not guilty and being released on her own recognizance. She was also ordered not to have any illegal contact with her boyfriend, whom she had been living with for about 2 years, and to return to court at a future date. Just 1 week later, Rivera allegedly attacked the victim again during another early morning argument. This time, she was accused of striking her boyfriend in the face with a glass vase not long before 7 a.m. on New Year's Day. A responding officer saw visible injuries on the victim and arrested Rivera on a felony charge of aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. The suspect was also charged with misdemeanor domestic battery on top of the domestic charge she was already facing in connection to the Christmas Eve altercation. She remains held without bond, pending the outcome of her case. 3. Giancarlo Triaca. Since the onset of the selfie era, there's been a strange uptick in people doing incredibly dangerous things on camera in an attempt to capture the perfect picture or get attention through shock value. In either case, aspiring influencers often carry out these thoughtless acts in a bid to increase their social media following, and they often do so without stopping to think of the many ways the situation could go wrong. For example, a 42-year-old Mexican tourist named Giancarlo Triaca was rammed by a wild deer while snapping a photo in close proximity to the creature during a trip to Greece back in 2023. Triaca was on a trip with his wife Erica when the couple became understandably fascinated by an array of wild animals that came up to them, including peacocks and deer. The creatures seemed tame, but if the pair allowed common sense to dictate, they would have known that it was better to play it safe by admiring the animals from a distance. After all, why risk it? After the attack, Triaca told Cater's news service that he was simply trying to take a picture of himself with a smaller deer that was standing in front of him when a large 12-point buck charged him from behind. Shocking footage captured by his wife showed the attacking deer rearing up on its hind legs and ramming Triaca with its antlers, breaking a few of his ribs. The stunned traveler remembered being in severe pain for a few days afterward, but he acknowledged that his injuries could have been much worse. He declined treatment at the hospital and toughed out his recovery with lots of medication and ice. Triaca's story, unfortunately, isn't all that unique. The rising number of selfie-related injuries coincides with the noticeable increase in tourists inching dangerously close to wild animals and getting attacked. Many people are so tired of seeing things like this happen that they think those on the receiving end of an animal's aggression deserve what comes to them, while others take a more forgiving stance. One thing everyone seems to agree on is that people should know better than to invade a dangerous wild animal space. 2. Entitled traveler tries to chase down plane. Missing a flight is extremely stressful, so it's understandable that people sometimes grow slightly irrational in their attempts to catch a departing plane. But most know when to ease up and accept the fact that they have no choice but to rebook and deal with both the travel delay and extra ticket price. There are a few exceptions, of course, including one entitled woman in 2023 who was so desperate to not miss her flight one day that she ran past security and onto the tarmac as the plane taxied towards its runway. The incident happened at Australia's Canberra airport, where the woman was trying to catch a QantasLink flight to Adelaide. As she rushed under the jet, she waved her hands up towards the cockpit, hoping the crew would see her and let her board. Witnesses were shocked that the woman managed to get past security, but they were even more surprised that she thought the plane might actually stop and let her on. These thoughts were echoed by countless social media users who chimed in with their 2 cents after bystander footage of the incident went viral online. After noticing the crazed woman, the pilot cut the engine for her safety. She was then arrested by the Australian Federal Police and was lucky enough to avoid having her name plastered in news reports, thanks to Australia's privacy laws. 1. Michael Holland. Known as the Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe killed at least 13 British women between 1975 and 1980. His crime sparked the UK's largest ever manhunt and one of the biggest law enforcement investigations in Britain's history. With as many as 200 cops under his command at any given time, a detective named Dick Holland was one of the top 2 leaders in the efforts made to identify and capture the serial killer, who was finally arrested in 1981 and sentenced to life in prison. Not everyone follows in their parents' footsteps, and that's okay. Dick Holland's son, Michael, chose not to pursue a career in law enforcement like his father and instead chose to become a gardener. He also allegedly did the exact opposite of his dad and took to a criminal lifestyle, which caught up with him in 2015 when he fell at the center of a police investigation into a suspected drug selling operation. Michael fell under suspicion when detectives in the Scottish city of Musselburgh saw him interacting with a suspect in the case named Stephen Wright, who was seen placing a suspicious black bag into the back of Holland's car. Police then pulled the vehicle over a short while later and found 8 grams of cocaine in Holland's possession. He claimed that he bought the drug to use as a numbing agent for a wobbly tooth since he was unable to make it to his dentist, whose office was 230 miles away. But Holland was not able to explain the nearly 2 kilograms of cocaine that officers discovered in the trunk of his car, which was divided into smaller bags for resale. Up to that point, Holland's criminal record was minor, and by the time the case went to trial in 2017, he was already 65 years old and in poor health. The elderly defendant was still found guilty of the charge. During Holland's sentencing, his attorneys depicted him as a beloved community member and argued that he was unlikely to re-offend thanks to his ailing physical health. They also claimed that their client was genuinely remorseful for his actions. Despite this, the judge sentenced Holland to serve 4 years in prison, showing that the authorities are unwilling to tolerate drug dealing and the devastating effects these substances have on Britain's communities. 13. Morel Tyler. A group of men were hanging out in an apartment in Kokomo, Indiana in October 2022 when a masked man entered the unit and attempted to rob them at gunpoint. Instead, the victims knocked the gun away and pinned the intruder to the floor. The suspect pulled out another gun and shot it, but thankfully nobody was hurt. One of the victims used his own gun to subdue the intruder. Police arrested 18-year-old Morel Tyler on suspicion of felony burglary after taking him to the hospital for multiple facial lacerations and other injuries. Some of the men who were targeted in the crime were also injured, but none of them needed medical attention. Since then, it seems as though Tyler's only continued to land himself in trouble with the law. In August of 2023, the Times of Northwest Indiana reported that Tyler was apprehended by U.S. Marshals on a robbery warrant, stemming from an incident a month and a half earlier. The young offender is accused of entering a gas station in Hobart and spraying an employee in the eyes with a chemical. Tyler allegedly ordered the worker to hand over her key, then tackled her and stole a key before exiting the shop and spraying a man with the same mysterious chemical. He demanded the victim's keys, but the man was able to get into his vehicle and dial 911. When police arrived at the scene, they found a broken ankle monitor that Tyler had removed before fleeing the scene. In addition to any previous charges he was facing, Tyler was hit with multiple counts in connection with the gas station robbery, including robbery resulting in bodily injury, attempted armed robbery, battery resulting in bodily injury, auto theft, and escape. 12. Mark Katz-Nelson. 65-year-old self-trained boxer Barry Sands was sleeping at his home in Miami-Dade County, Florida one night in 2019 when he awoke to the sound of his neighbor and someone else pounding on his front door and yelling for help. The moment he opened the door, he was ambushed by 35-year-old Mark Katz-Nelson and a woman who forced their way inside. Katz-Nelson began throwing punches at Sands, who immediately struck back with repeated blows. The quick-thinking homeowner was able to toss Katz-Nelson out and call the cops, who took the suspected intruder to the hospital for his injuries, before booking him on charges of burglary with assault or battery, drug possession, and more. 11. Intruder enters WWE legend's home. Better known by his stage name Hacksaw, pro wrestling legend Jim Duggan was at home with his wife in South Carolina in late 2022 when an intruder entered through an unlocked door and fell onto the floor. The 68-year-old retired athlete wrestled the accused burglar to the floor and held him at gunpoint until the police arrived. Duggan recounted the harrowing experience in a tweet thanking the Kershaw County Sheriff's Office for their assistance at the scene. During an interview with Wrestling Inc., he described the intruder as a man in his 20s. He said that as he held the man on the ground, he overheard voices from outside. Suspecting that they may be other potential intruders, Duggan turned his Christmas lights off and instructed the suspect to remain quiet. In a shocking twist, the man told Duggan that he was fleeing from a group of people who he thought might kill him when he jumped a fence into the former WWE star's yard. He further explained to the police that he'd gone to visit his girlfriend when her family threatened his life and assaulted him at gunpoint, kicking and punching him as he tried to flee. After escaping, he ran into Duggan's house in a desperate attempt to avoid being attacked again. Given the circumstances of the situation, Duggan chose not to press charges against the man and said that he was glad nobody got seriously hurt throughout the ordeal. 10. Elderly Lady Ninja takes down drunk intruder. Standing at less than 5 feet tall and weighing just 100 pounds, 67-year-old Lorenza Marujo hardly seems like the type to fearlessly take down a home intruder who dwarfs her in size. But, as they say, looks can be deceiving. The pint-sized senior citizen has over 20 years of martial arts training under her belt and is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And when a 59-year-old intoxicated man showed up at her doorstep in Fontana, California in 2020, she sprang into action without a second thought. It all started when the suspect, who happened to be a handyman who lived at the same senior living complex, entered Marujo's third-floor apartment and said he was looking for his girlfriend. He tried to grab Marujo, who in turn grabbed a baseball bat and warned the intruder to back off or she would hurt him. The suspect ran off, but Marujo wanted to make sure he didn't target anyone else in the building. She ran down to the first floor, where she overheard her friend and the mother of the suspect's girlfriend, 81-year-old Elizabeth McCrae, screaming from inside her apartment. Marujo dialed 911 while entering the apartment and used her skills to trip the suspect, later identified as Donald Robert Prestwood. She told the San Bernardino Sun that after Prestwood fell, he held McCrae down with his legs. She fought him off of the elderly woman by bending his fingers back and jamming her elbow into his sternum twice. Once she got Prestwood off McCrae, Marujo held him to the ground while digging her knee into his chest, while putting one hand around his neck and using the other to scrunch his mouth. Police arrested Prestwood on suspicion of elder abuse. In the meantime, Marujo was happy to demonstrate how she handled the 5'10", 170-pound suspect, whose case appears to be ongoing. Law enforcement commended Marujo for her brave reaction to the situation, but cautioned the public against doing the same due to the obvious risk of getting hurt. 9. Joseph Ridge. Instead of shying away from danger when a man broke into her house in April 2022, a high schooler named Avery Cormier stepped up to the occasion and took action to stop the crime in progress. The straight-A student later told local station WLBT that she awoke to the sound of footsteps in her Middleborough, Massachusetts home. Cormier initially thought it might be her mum, but she quickly realized that this wasn't the case. After noticing someone who appeared to be stealing items, she grabbed 2 steak knives from the kitchen and confronted the intruder, yelling at the top of her lungs to get out of the house. As the suspect ran away and sped off in a vehicle, Cormier grabbed her phone and recorded him fleeing. She then dialed 911 and shared footage of the getaway with responding officers, who were able to get the car's license plate number from the video. Authorities charged 58-year-old Joseph Ridge with aggravated breaking and entering, trespassing, attempted larceny, and disorderly conduct. Cormier credited her adrenaline with guiding her reaction to the intruder's presence, and police praised the team with having the presence of mind and courage to record footage of the suspect's car, which ultimately led to his capture. 8. Military recruit stops smash and grab. While meeting with a potential recruit at a Los Angeles shopping mall in 2022, Marine Staff Sergeant Jose Fragoso overheard glass shattering and people screaming from the direction of a nearby jewelry store. He and the recruit ran toward the noise and came face to face with 4 masked hammer-wielding thieves. The suspects were smashing jewelry cases and stealing thousands of dollars worth of jewelry. Fragoso tackled one of the thieves while the other 3 made a run for it. Another recruiter and the applicant took down another suspect with help from bystanders. While 2 of the thieves got away, the Good Samaritans managed to keep the 2 other suspects under control until police arrived and took them into custody. Later on, outside the store, Fragoso and his colleague recovered 20 pieces of stolen jewelry. Speaking with Fox News, Fragoso said that he didn't think the suspects expected to be stopped by people in uniform who weren't police officers. He said that his superiors commended him for handling the situation with the composure and integrity that reflect the values of the U.S. Marines. 7. George Kinnear. 63-year-old Rosie Ann Gibson and her 26-year-old nephew Christopher Brown were working at a newsstand in Glasgow, Scotland in 2021 when a masked man entered the store with a claw hammer and demanded cash. Instead of complying with his demand, Christopher leapt over the counter and tackled the thief to the floor. Rosie Ann rushed over to help and pulled the suspect's mask off. She recognized him as a previous customer. And while the grandmother only stands at 4 feet 11 inches tall, she proved that she was tougher than she seemed as he helped Christopher pin the thief into place until the police arrived. A bystander took the claw hammer away from the suspect. Authorities charged George Kinnear with attempted robbery and threatening violence. Responding officers discovered a knife in his possession. Speaking with the Daily Record, Rosie Ann said the incident left her shaken and caused her to change a lot of her habits. It was the first time anything like this had ever happened in the store, and when she watched the security footage, she was shocked by her quick-thinking reaction to the crime. Nicholas also reacted instinctively, forgetting that there was a panic button behind the counter before he jumped on the suspect. Following the botched crime, Rosie Ann no longer stood outside the store alone in the morning before opening up, which she'd done for decades. She began waiting in her car across the street and expressed feeling annoyed by fear and anger that she continued to suffer from after the incident. Luckily, nobody was harmed, and Kinnear was held accountable for his actions. 6. Christian Carl Whedon. A serial thief from East Lancashire, England named Christian Carl Whedon has made headlines several times in recent years for his repeated crimes. In 2020, the Lancashire Telegraph reported that Whedon had been sent back to prison after being released for previous crimes when he was connected to DNA on a cigarette that was left behind at a crime scene. Whedon admitted to stealing a bike and a pair of sunglasses and having methamphetamine in his possession. He received a 26-week sentence, but it wouldn't be his last time in the slammer. By then, he already had a lengthy history of theft convictions, and the judge was in no mood to see him again anytime soon. Just 5 days after being released on bail the following year, Whedon was back behind bars on theft, vehicle interference, and criminal damage charges. He admitted to stealing musical equipment from a musician's vehicle outside a bar, where the performer had left it overnight with plans to retrieve it the next day. While at the pub assessing the situation the next day, the musician William Strahan spotted Whedon putting some of his belongings in a taxi. Strahan went outside and confronted Whedon, and the pair got into a violent struggle before Strahan was eventually able to subdue the thief. He flagged down a passing cop, and Whedon was taken back into custody. The judge released Whedon, and just 5 days later he was seen trying to steal from a car and smashing the window of an oldie store. Left with no other choice, the judge revoked Whedon's bail and ordered the serial thief to finish serving his original prison sentence. 5. Stephen Shepard. One evening in 2016, 75-year-old John Moles noticed a man approaching his home in Salton, Washington. He expected the stranger, later identified as 25-year-old Stephen Shepard, to knock on the door, but instead, Shepard smashed a window using a crowbar and then struck Moles in the head while demanding his car key. Moles ran into his bedroom, where he attempted to grab his gun and defend himself with it. But the intruder caught up with him and continued to beat him over the head with the crowbar before stabbing him in the abdomen with an 8-inch knife. John's wife, 80-year-old Barb Moles, overheard the commotion from outside and went to go see what was going on. She found John on the floor, saying that he had been stabbed and could hear Shepard going on about the car keys he wanted to steal. Barb snuck into her bedroom as the suspect walked around the house and quickly grabbed her gun. She went back out into the hallway and heard what sounded like Shepard rummaging through a medicine cabinet. Just moments later, Shepard emerged into the hallway and charged at her. Left with no other choice if she wanted to save her own life, Barb pulled the trigger. Shepard continued charging toward her, so she pulled the trigger 3 more times. After realizing Shepard was dead, Barb dialed 911. John was rushed to the hospital, where he underwent emergency surgery for severe injuries but thankfully survived. Authorities declined to charge Barb Moles after determining that the shooting was a justified case of self-defense. She told local station Como that she never anticipated having to shoot someone at any point in her lifetime, but that she'd do it again in a heartbeat to protect herself and her family. 4. Marlon Stewart. 37-year-old Marlon Stewart committed 13 crimes in a 20-minute span during a robbery spree in West Yorkshire, England in July of 2022. It started when he threatened 3 young men and stole 2 of their cell phones. He proceeded to demand money from a worker at a store before threatening a civilian and stealing their car. From there, Stewart went to another shop and threatened the cashier at gunpoint. 61-year-old store employee Niall Strannix was mopping the floor when the attempted robbery occurred. While attempting to subdue Stewart into a headlock, he was struck twice in the head with a bottle. As the men wrestled over Stewart's gun, it began falling apart. It would later become apparent that the weapon was a plastic toy. The thief managed to break free and fled the scene without stealing anything, but was soon captured by police and arrested on 4 counts of robbery, 1 count of attempted robbery, 5 counts of having a gun while committing a robbery, assault resulting in actual bodily harm, driving while disqualified, and driving without insurance. Law enforcement credited Strannix with protecting his female co-worker and for the suspect's face being captured on CCTV, which enabled authorities to identify him. Stewart was sentenced to more than 10 years in prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. 3. Blind reporter thwarts robbery. BBC reporter Sean Dilley is congenitally blind, meaning he was blind at birth. He relies on a service dog to help him get around, but is otherwise able to live independently. When someone on a bicycle rode by and swiped his phone out of his hand one day in London in 2022, he instinctively reacted by jumping on top of the thief. In a series of tweets, Dilley described how he knocked the suspect off his bike, got his phone back, and safely detained him while calling the police. The reporter let the suspect go after onlookers came by to help, noting that he didn't want to injure the man. He then carried on with his day, and while he sustained some cuts and bruises, Dilley was otherwise okay. In his social media post, he wrote that he believed he was targeted because he's blind, but as the thief learned, it was the wrong day, wrong blind person. Dilley later admitted that he took a risky move by tackling the thief, and that in most cases it's probably not worth it. But he was glad he chose to do it even though the suspect got away. Following the robbery, the Metro Police said that they were planning to review security footage in hopes of identifying and arresting the suspect. 2. Blake Grady. In a harrowing act of bravery that was captured on camera in May of 2023, a father tackled his own son who was suspected of committing a hit-and-run in Durham, North Carolina. According to the sheriff's office, Blake Grady fatally struck a 61-year-old woman on a bicycle. Police body cam footage showed Grady attempting to flee in his vehicle and then on foot as deputies chased after him. One of the deputies caught up with Grady and took him to the ground with the help of 3 bystanders. In the background, the deputy could be heard saying that the suspect was intoxicated and had flipped his car in a ditch. After putting Grady in the back of the vehicle, it was revealed that his father was one of the Good Samaritans who helped apprehend him. Grady's father could be heard identifying himself to a deputy, who told him the situation was under control and to go back inside. Authorities charged Grady with second-degree murder and multiple other crimes. He reportedly admitted to using meth, heroin, and marijuana on the day of the crash. In addition to the victim who died, 1 deputy was injured in the ordeal. At the time of his arrest, Grady already had 40 prior convictions under his belt, including 2 DWIs. His ex-fiancée and the mother of his child, Alexis Candelaria, told local station WRAL that she felt the court system was being too lenient with him by repeatedly releasing him from jail, while he continued to harm people as a result of driving intoxicated. In her own words, Candelaria said, "I knew that he would end up either killing himself or killing somebody." She mentioned repeated instances of Grady overdosing, including one incident that occurred at a gas station just a week before the deadly hit-and-run. A few months earlier, Grady had allegedly hit someone who was changing their car tire along an interstate. He also crashed his car 2 months before that and back in 2020. According to the young woman, there were several instances where Grady crashed and didn't get charged with DWI, but probably should have. Candelaria told the station that she tried to stop Grady from driving on the day of the crash. She even stood in his car to try blocking him from leaving the driveway. But Grady was apparently intent on doing what he wanted to do, and at the end of the day, he's an adult who makes his own decisions. 1. Jonathan Kirby. James Todd Smith, better known as LL Cool J, went down in modern history as one of the earliest commercially successful rappers. He also gained a reputation for having a mean right hook after a 56-year-old transient named Jonathan Kirby broke into his house in 2012. The musician and his family were sleeping in their Sherman Oaks, California home when they were awakened by their security alarm at 1 o'clock in the morning. LL Cool J sprang into action and took the burglar down. He held Kirby to the ground until police arrived. Before being hauled off to jail, Kirby went to the hospital with a broken nose, jaw, and ribs. He was charged with first-degree burglary. As a so-called third striker, he faced a lengthy sentence if convicted of the charge. Kirby's previous convictions included a voluntary manslaughter case out of Texas, as well as auto theft, first-degree burglary, and petty theft counts in California. If convicted of burglarizing LL Cool J's house, he faced a sentence of 38 years to life. While the outcome of the case is unclear, records show that there are no prisoners by the name of Jonathan Kirby in the California or federal prison systems.
Number 18. Kwame Young. In March 2023, police were called to a McDonald's restaurant in Cocoa, Florida, where a customer allegedly threw a dramatic and colossal fit over a non-existent menu item. According to an employee who spoke with local station Click Orlando, 26-year-old Kwame Young tried ordering a cheeseburger bundle. The restaurant does not carry a combo by that name, but an employee offered to sell the woman a burger and a small fry because it sounded like that was what she wanted. Things got out of hand during Young's second visit to the drive-thru that day, according to the worker, who said that Young pulled ahead to the drive-thru window after being told at the ordering station that she couldn't have a meal that wasn't on the menu. According to an affidavit, an employee asked Young why she was so mad, only to have the woman brandish a 9mm pistol and pointed it in their direction while verbally threatening them. In bodycam footage captured by a responding officer, Young could be heard denying the allegations. Police nevertheless charged her with knowingly driving with a suspended license and one felony count of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon without the intent to kill. Number 17. Junior Francis. People who are fascinated with money love to brag about it when they have it, and Junior Francis was no exception. The 33-year-old routinely posted selfies of himself holding giant wads of cash and otherwise showing off his extravagant lifestyle on social media, which were often accompanied by captions quoting rap songs about how he worked hard to earn his fortune. But when someone displays an abundance of wealth with no easily identifiable explanation for where it came from, authorities tend to become curious. Francis's braggy posts caught the attention of law enforcement, and in November 2014, police raided his home in South London and arrested him on suspicion of selling drugs. Francis denied being a drug dealer or having a large amount of cash, despite the fact that authorities found £75,000 worth of heroin and crack cocaine inside his residence, along with the suspected proceeds of his alleged drug-selling operation. He reportedly failed to come up with an explanation when asked to explain where all the money in his social media photos came from. According to investigators, Francis ran his illicit business through bullying and intimidation while boasting on social media about his ill-gotten gains. As the police pointed out, his vanity proved to be his undoing. Like many young criminals who are running into big cash for the first time, he apparently wanted the world to know that he was successful and failed to consider that he was making himself an easy target for law enforcement. In 2015, Francis pleaded guilty to money laundering and possession with the intent to supply. He was sentenced to 6 years and 8 months in prison, and one can only hope that he has put his business skills to honest use and is now making a legitimate living. Number 16. Caleb Hart. Shortly before midnight on an otherwise normal Sunday in Stillwater, Oklahoma in April 2023, a Payne County deputy attempted to pull over a vehicle for a broken license plate light. The driver, 25-year-old Caleb Hart, sped off and managed to evade law enforcement for the next several hours, even after a spike strip disabled one of his tires. He also allegedly blew stop signs, swerved back and forth over the center line, and struck a patrol car during the chase, which the pursuing deputy ended when his siren stopped working. While searching for Hart, Deputy Patricia Benavidez discovered his overturned pickup truck at an intersection. It was empty, and a subsequent search turned up no other signs of the suspect. When all else failed, a lieutenant sent Hart a text message stating, "In Glencoe, where you at?" hoping the suspect would assume it was someone other than the police. Much to law enforcement's surprise, Hart responded by sharing his location, bringing the lengthy ordeal to an unexpectedly easy end. He reportedly thought he was texting with someone he knew from drug court, and when he asked for the person's identity, the lieutenant obviously knew better than to tell the truth, until Hart was in custody. Deputies reported to the location in an unmarked car, and Hart surrendered without further incident. He allegedly smelled of alcohol and had red, watery eyes, which was highly concerning considering his history of drunk driving arrests. Hart was charged with running a roadblock, attempting to elude, assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, driving on a suspended license, public intoxication, and failing to carry a security verification form. He remains held at the Payne County Jail pending the outcome of his case and could reportedly face upwards of 2 decades in prison if convicted as charged. Number 15. Matthew Letham. It's a bad idea to commit crimes in the first place, but it's an especially bad idea if you have easily identifiable features that make you hard to miss. 24-year-old Matthew Letham, who has the state of Florida tattooed on his forehead, apparently missed that memo when he allegedly decided to attack a friend with a razor blade in October 2022. According to a witness, Lethem and the victim were arguing over a cell phone outside a gas station in Hudson, Florida at 4:30 in the morning when Lethem slashed the victim's neck and leg. Surveillance footage appeared to show Lethem chasing the victim as he held a t-shirt to his neck wound. The injured party ended up needing staples to close the laceration. During questioning, Lethem reportedly admitted to cutting his friend with a razor, but claimed he acted in self-defense. He had no visible injuries, making it hard for investigators to believe his story, and he was booked on a felony charge of aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. Lethem was released on a $10,000 bond and was ordered to have no contact with the victim as he awaited his next court date. He was also banned from possessing weapons. The outcome of the case is unclear, but this was not the first time Lethem made news headlines for being arrested while sporting his distinctive head tattoo. In early 2021, he was accused of calling 911 twice to ask for a ride home and verbally abusing the dispatcher. According to police, a deputy found Lethem walking alone on the side of the road in Pasco County shortly after he placed the first call. The deputy offered to call a taxi, but Lethem said that he had no money and continued walking. Lethem was still in the deputy's line of sight when he allegedly dialed 911 a second time and cursed at the dispatcher, who gave him a non-emergency number to call. He was arrested after the second phone call and eventually pleaded no contest to misuse of 911 and possession of marijuana. Earlier that year, Lethem was accused of choking his mother and received a deferred prosecution judgment, which typically means that a defendant is given a chance to avoid a conviction as long as they follow rules set forth by the court for a certain period of time. Number 14. Jordan Mulcahy. In February 2021, 33-year-old Minnesotan Jordan Mulcahy allegedly got drunk and threw a microwave out the window of his hotel room in St. Cloud, Florida. An employee called the police just after 2 o'clock in the morning and asked them to remove Mulcahy from the room, claiming he had locked himself in and was refusing to come out. Responding officers were unable to locate Mulcahy until several hours later, when they responded to a call about a man sleeping in the entryway of a nearby apartment building and found their suspect snoozing away shortly before 7 a.m. According to an arrest report, Mulcahy made bizarre comments while a deputy transported him to a nearby hospital, including a statement about being at a funeral and him smiling, and stated that the officer would not be smiling then. Just a week earlier, Mulcahy had been arrested back in Minnesota for allegedly driving drunk, fleeing police, and threatening the arresting officers. According to a criminal complaint, the ordeal began when police officers in Sauk Rapids noticed a pickup truck speeding and squealing its tires. Mulcahy abandoned his truck while it was still running and attempted to flee on foot, but was quickly apprehended behind a nearby residence. He reportedly blew a .19 during a preliminary breathalyzer, putting his blood alcohol content at more than twice the legal limit. In addition to refusing a second breathalyzer at the police station, Mulcahy was accused of throwing a chair at a cop and promising to find him upon being released. He was charged with 1 felony count of threatening violence, along with misdemeanor counts for refusing to submit to chemical testing, driving while impaired, and fleeing a peace officer on foot. Mulcahy appeared in the news again 2 years later in February 2023 when he was accused of burglarizing a Florida office building while drunk. According to police, Mulcahy was vacationing in Clearwater when he entered the building, which was not open to the public, and was confronted by a cleaning crew member. A criminal complaint stated that he was seen leaving with a bag full of alcohol bottles in one hand and a fire extinguisher in the other. Responding deputies arrested Mulcahy shortly after midnight on suspicion of felony burglary and grand theft, as well as misdemeanor petty theft. He was held on $20,000 bond for the Florida charges, along with a felony warrant out of Minnesota for the recent theft of 2 laptops from a Best Buy store. Only time will tell whether he'll add to his growing list of convictions for assault, property damage, fleeing police, forgery, theft, robbery, fraud, DWI, false imprisonment, making terroristic threats, assaulting an officer, escaping from custody, domestic abuse, and disorderly conduct. Number 13. Caleb Concepcion. If you're going to use a fake license plate, which is a terrible idea to begin with, it's best to use one with the most inconspicuous letter and number combination you can get your hands on. This apparently was not the line of thinking for 26-year-old Caleb Concepcion, who caught the eye of police in Clearwater, Florida in April 2023, while riding a motorcycle with a phony New Jersey Vanity plate bearing the lettering "Bend Over." An officer who attempted to approach Concepcion on foot at a red light later noted that the suspect looked over at him and restarted the bike. Concepcion allegedly ignored subsequent orders to stop and sped off through the intersection. According to an arrest report, he crashed the motorcycle just moments later. He was taken to a nearby hospital for treatment to his injuries and exercised his right to remain silent while being booked into jail under the alias Justine Miranda. Concepcion was charged with a felony fleeing count for using high-speed, wanton disregard while attempting to evade law enforcement. Jail records showed that he was also wanted as a fugitive out of his home state. Number 12. Brandon Pressure. Police in Lawrence, South Carolina were alerted to a highly unusual crime in August 2021 when multiple social media users tagged local detectives in a video that showed someone tattooing a McDonald's employee's arm in the restaurant's dining room. The footage was captured by a disturbed onlooker who noticed what was going on when she became frustrated with the long wait for her food in the drive-thru and peered into the restaurant. When she noticed the disturbing activities in the dining room, she took out her phone and began recording while complaining about how the employee in the video was getting a tattoo at her workplace instead of working to get food orders out faster. In addition to the obviously inappropriate environment the tattoo was being done in, the situation was made even more disturbing by the fact that the suspect, 28-year-old Brandon Pressure, was not a licensed tattoo artist and that the person receiving the tattoo was a minor. He was charged with misdemeanor counts of illegal tattooing and underage tattooing and was freed on a $25,000 bond while his case worked its way through the court system. Speaking with local station WBTV, Police Chief Chrissy Lattimore said she didn't know if Pressure had previously inked any other tattoos in the McDonald's lobby, but she noted that he looked pretty comfortable in the video. Pressure pleaded guilty as charged and received a 9-month suspended prison sentence plus 18 months of probation. He was also ordered to pay several $100s in court costs and to perform community service. Interestingly, this wasn't Pressure's first time being arrested at that specific McDonald's location. Less than a year earlier, in October 2020, he was accused of stabbing a man twice in the restaurant's bathroom during a heated confrontation. He was originally charged with assault, attempted murder, but pleaded guilty to assault and battery. Pressure was initially sentenced to 3 years behind bars, but a judge suspended the term in favor of a 2-year probation sentence. Number 11. Kevin T. Matthew. While working as a lieutenant for the Bergen County, New Jersey prosecutor in 2022 and 2023, 47-year-old Kevin T. Matthew allegedly removed cocaine and fentanyl from the evidence room without authorization. According to authorities, Matthew signed the narcotics out from the main evidence vault in Paramus using database software, despite having no authority or valid reason to do so. He was a member of the Special Victims Unit rather than a narcotics unit, and his job duties did not include accessing narcotic-related evidence. Matthew is also accused of making substantial cash deposits at several banks during a time period that matches up with when the drugs were taken. The pattern of the deposits reportedly indicates that he was most likely trying to avoid the federal requirement for banks to report cash transactions upwards of $10,000 in one day. Several of the items Matthew took were returned in substantially different condition than when they were taken, according to authorities, who also claim to have found 2 razor blades in Matthew's office containing a residue that tested positive for cocaine. The suspicious activities allegedly occurred over a more than year-long period beginning in October 2022. Matthew claimed that he returned the evidence in the exact same condition that he found it in. He is currently on leave from his job as he faces charges of official misconduct, tampering with physical evidence, possession of a controlled substance, possession of drug paraphernalia, and structuring financial transactions. Number 10. John Anthony Fields. After receiving numerous calls in the middle of the day about a suspected drunk driver in Spotsylvania County, Virginia in December 2023, deputies began searching for the vehicle in question. They didn't have to look far before the suspect lost control of his truck and slammed into Senior Deputy Tibor Kreiter's car head-on. Kreiter had little time to notice and even less time to act before the truck failed to follow the road curve and veered into his lane at full speed. Harrowing dashcam footage showed the deputy attempting to drive off the road and out of the accused drunk driver's path, but he was blocked by trees. Moving to the left also wasn't an option due to traffic. The suspect's truck swiped the left side of Kreiter's cruiser so hard that it took off a back wheel. Kreiter was treated for non-life-threatening injuries at a nearby hospital, while the suspect, 57-year-old John Anthony Fields, was arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence, reckless driving, and failure to drive on the right side of the highway. He was released on bond pending the outcome of the case. Virginia has some of the nation's harshest drunk driving laws, according to the Department of Motor Vehicles. Even if it's Fields' first offense, he could lose his license for a year and be fined a minimum of $250 if convicted as charged. Number 9. Robert Lawson. In October 2022, deputies in Pinellas County, Florida, questioned a man who had been seen loitering suspiciously near a wooded area in Clearwater. Later identified as 50-year-old Robert Lawson, he gave law enforcement permission to search him and his belongings. During the search, deputies found a used syringe containing a brown residue and a crystal-like substance which tested positive for methamphetamine. Normally at this point during a police interaction, a suspect either tries to explain their way out of an arrest or they accept the consequences of the situation and cooperatively go into custody. Lawson tried an unusual approach and claimed that he was allowed to carry methamphetamine. He ordered Deputy Daniel Maddox to call the FBI and the Clearwater Police Department, who had supposedly given their blessing, but the law enforcement members at the scene naturally did not believe his story. Lawson was booked into the Pinellas County Jail on suspicion of felony drug possession and a misdemeanor drug paraphernalia charge. While this wasn't Lawson's first run-in with the law, it appeared to be the first time he ever tried to claim a legal right to carry drugs. He has a fairly lengthy rap sheet, which includes convictions for trespassing, battery, possession of drug paraphernalia, and consuming alcohol in public. Number 8. Kenjuan McDaniel. In August 2023, a 25-year-old Las Vegas-based rapper named Kenjuan McDaniel was arrested in connection with a nearly 2-year-old murder case after he published a YouTube video that allegedly contained details about the crime that only the killer would know. The murder in question occurred in September 2021, when a man named Randall Wallace was shot dead near an intersection during the early evening hours. Witnesses saw a suspect fleeing the scene in a white vehicle and told police that they did not believe Wallace was the intended victim. With little other information to go on, investigators were unable to identify a suspect. About a month after the shooting, a reluctant witness who had already spoken with detectives came forward and admitted to knowing more information, but expressed a fear of being labeled a snitch. The individual ended up sharing what they knew, leading investigators to identify McDaniel as a person of interest. But there apparently wasn't a strong enough case to charge him in connection with the crime until mid-2023, when a detective assigned to the case discovered a recently posted video for a song called Fade Free on YouTube. According to a warrant obtained by the Washington Post, the specific lyrics that implicate McDaniel are being withheld from the public and would not be common knowledge. But the warrant claims that McDaniel took credit for Wallace's murder and acted out certain portions of it in the video, which appeared on a channel going by his stage name, The Biggest Fin 4800. Court records show that McDaniel faces an open murder charge, along with 1 count of violating probation. Assuming the case goes to trial, the jury will be given the option of deciding if McDaniel is guilty of first-degree murder, second-degree murder, voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, or not guilty. If convicted of second-degree murder, McDaniel could face 25 years to life in prison. He does not appear to be in custody at this time, and the current status of the case is unclear. Number 7. Clifford Craig Edwards. In March of 2023, a Florida couple spotted a man standing next to their new Nissan sedan outside a restaurant in St. Pete Beach, Florida, while making suspicious motions with his arm. When they confronted the suspect, he laughed and ran away. Upon examining the car, the couple discovered extensive scratching and paint damage to the entire driver's side of the vehicle, along with a butter knife laying on the ground nearby. According to a police report, the car sustained over $1,000 in damages. While reviewing the restaurant's surveillance footage, investigators noticed that the suspect had put his phone number on the wait list for a table earlier that evening. They called the number and subsequently met up with Clifford Craig Edwards, who was vacationing in the area from his home state of Missouri. Edwards reportedly agreed to speak with law enforcement after being read his Miranda rights and chalked the act of vandalism up to a spring break mistake, despite being 52 years old. At the time, Edwards' LinkedIn profile listed him as a licensed real estate broker and the development director of a firm that manages residential developments. He was charged with felony criminal mischief and released from the Pinellas County Jail after his wife posted a $2,000 bond. Number 6. Nicholas Overton. British serial thief Nicholas Overton already had 20 previous robbery convictions on his record when he targeted a supermarket in Newport, Wales, while dressed as a witch in July 2017. Donning a blonde wig, a long black dress, and a pointed hat, the 39-year-old entered the business, pulled a 2-foot-long machete, and cleaned out the cash register. CCTV footage showed panicked customers and employees immediately running away from Overton, who probably thought he would get away with his crime. But his disguise did nothing to help conceal his identity after 2 shoppers recorded him speeding off in his own vehicle. Police were quickly able to identify Overton as their suspect based on his license plate number. A high-speed chase ensued several hours later, with Overton reaching speeds of 70 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. He ran over a spike strip and was soon found hiding in the corner of someone's yard. Overton pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including robbery, having an offensive weapon, and dangerous driving. At his sentencing hearing, his defense attorney blamed his actions on his drug addiction, but the judge had little sympathy to spare, given Overton's extensive criminal record, and sentenced him to life in prison with a minimum of 4 years, followed by lifetime probation. Number 5. Henry Capuch. An employee at a bar in St. Petersburg, Florida, encountered an unpleasant surprise when he went to retrieve some ice during a late shift in December 2022. As he approached the ice machine at midnight, the worker, Richard Cleese, noticed a man urinating in it. When he told the very obviously drunk patron to stop what he was doing, the man allegedly cursed at him and shoved him several times. Later identified as 30-year-old Chicago police officer Henry Capuch, the suspect was on vacation at the time of the incident. According to an arrest report, he utilized both of his hands and shoved the victim in the chest a couple of times. Capuch proceeded to shove a security guard following his unpleasant reaction to Cleese telling him to stop peeing in the ice machine. Responding officers found Capuch on the beach nearby with his girlfriend. In their report, they accused him of being uncooperative while being taken into custody, stating the defendant was actively resisting and initially not obeying lawful commands while being detained. The report further stated that Capuch continued to yell and stand up while police were telling him to sit down. Capuch was released on a $650 bond after being booked on misdemeanor charges of battery and disorderly conduct. But the legal consequences of the incident were far less damaging than the damage to his career. Following his arrest, the Chicago Police Department announced that Capuch had been relieved of his police powers, pending the outcome of an internal investigation into the allegations against him. Number 4. Angelo Jackson Mendiva. While working as a security supervisor at a high school in Bakersfield, California, 27-year-old Angelo Jackson Mendiva teamed up with a student to run a business selling homemade explosives and bomb-building materials that they advertised on social media. According to court documents, the pair filled their Instagram business page with images and videos of their devices, which they shipped to customers across the United States. Mendiva and his young accomplice also exchanged messages about their products and business. In one message to his business partner, Mendiva included a photo and videos of an explosive called a titanium salute, along with a caption stating, "Homemade kills all consumer." During a search of Mendiva and his accomplice's properties in June 2023, federal authorities seized roughly 500 pounds of explosives and explosive materials from each household. In December 2023, Mendiva pleaded guilty to making false statements to FBI agents, as well as conspiring to engage in manufacturing and dealing in explosive materials and mailing explosive devices. He faces up to 5 years in prison and up to $1 million in fines, and is scheduled to be sentenced in April 2024. Number 3. Michael Gale Nash. Michael Gale Nash earned himself a spot on at least one dumbest criminals list in May of 2018 when he was busted counting his ill-gotten funds outside a First National Bank branch he had just robbed in Anchorage, Alaska on a Tuesday afternoon. Minutes earlier, he had allegedly entered the bank with a large backpack and handed the teller a note demanding cash, which was written on an affordable housing form with his name and birth date on it. The note stated, "This is a hold-up," and ordered the employee to put money in the bag, followed by, "God help us." Nash made off with just $400, and he didn't get very far with it since he decided to stop and count it the moment he stepped outside. He even sat down, according to news reports from right after the crime. No weapons were used in the robbery, and Nash was apprehended without incident. He reportedly confessed to the heist and was sentenced to a year in prison, followed by 5 years of probation, the latter of which he was still serving when he was accused of robbing the same exact bank again in October 2023. According to federal authorities, Nash approached the bank at 9 o'clock in the morning and began violently pulling on the door handles. When staff members told him through the glass that the bank would not open for another hour, he allegedly slipped a note through the door demanding money. This time the note stated, "This is a robbery," and instructed the recipient to put the money in the bag. It was signed off with, "God help us all." The supervisor who received the note immediately yelled for employees to activate the bank's secondary locking system and dialed 911. As the staff waited inside for the police to arrive, Nash reportedly loitered outside, waiting for the money he demanded to be delivered to him. A security officer urged him to leave, but he remained put. He reportedly appeared nervous and stuttering as he peacefully surrendered to responding officers. While being handcuffed and transported to the police station, Nash allegedly bragged about how it wasn't his first time robbing a bank. He was federally charged with 1 count of bank robbery and could face up to 20 years in prison if convicted. Number 2. Josh Cheeseman. During the pre-dawn hours one morning in February 2021, police in Penryn, England received a call about a man leaving a nearby residence following a drug-related argument. They caught up with the man, 27-year-old Josh Cheeseman, and noticed while they were talking that he seemed nervous. While searching Cheeseman's bag, officers found £550 cash and marijuana cigarettes. Based on these findings, law enforcement was able to quickly obtain a warrant to search the suspect's residence. 2 hours after the initial arrest, officers raided Cheeseman's home and found £1.5 pounds of marijuana, along with nearly £1,200 in cash and an illegal collapsible baton. Up until this point, the interactions between police and Cheeseman reflected a fairly standard drug investigation and arrest. But it must have been difficult for officers not to roll their eyes and laugh when he claimed that his marijuana stash was strictly for personal use. While it's certainly possible that he was telling the truth, it's rare for someone to have over £1 pound of weed in their possession with no plans to sell any of it. Cheeseman also told investigators that the cash found inside his home was savings toward his electric bill and that he carried the baton for personal protection after being stabbed a year prior. In court, his attorney argued that his drug-dealing activities only went as far as supplying friends who noticed he was stocked up during COVID and were in need. The young man's lawyer also claimed that her client used marijuana primarily for his own therapeutic benefit and that he had earned his college degree as his case worked its way through the court system. To be fair, it was Cheeseman's first time facing criminal charges. The judge acknowledged that there was an element of naivety to the defendant's illicit activities and that he experienced limited financial gain from selling marijuana. Cheeseman received a 12-month community order, which means that he was required to follow certain rules put forth by the court for a year, and he was also ordered to perform community service. Number 1. Michael Keanu Brennan. 24-year-old Michael Keanu Brennan was nabbed by law enforcement during the summer of 2023 after allegedly using stolen credit card information to pay the $3,000 tab for a 17-night stay at a vacation rental in Pinellas County, Florida. The fun came to an end when he was picked up at the property in Indian Rocks Beach, located just blocks from the Gulf Coast, and taken to the much less scenic Pinellas County Jail. During a search of the property, police reportedly found a collection of driver's licenses, checks, credit and debit cards, and social security cards in various names. Brennan reportedly admitted to buying a stolen identity over the internet and using it to pay for the vacation rental. While booking Brennan into the jail, staff warned him that he could catch extra charges if he was caught with drugs or contraband while being searched. According to an arrest affidavit, Brennan said he wasn't carrying anything, but a deputy found a live .22 caliber bullet hidden beneath his privates during the search. Just as he had been warned, Brennan was hit with an additional felony charge for introducing contraband into a detention facility. He was released on bond the next day, with instructions to return to court at a later date.